At exactly 11:47 p.m., Daniel Mercer stepped into the elevator of Blackthorne Heights carrying cold coffee in one hand and a laptop bag over his shoulder. Rain hammered against the glass entrance behind him, while distant thunder rolled through the empty city streets outside. The lobby looked unusually deserted tonight. Even the security desk near the entrance sat empty, its computer monitor glowing faintly in the darkness. Daniel barely noticed. He had worked late again, same as always. Same exhausting schedule, same lonely apartment waiting upstairs on floor 12. He pressed the elevator button and sighed quietly while the old steel doors closed in front of him. Blackthorne Heights was considered a luxury building, but the elevator felt ancient. The lights flickered sometimes. The cables groaned loudly while moving. Residents complained constantly, but management always blamed temporary maintenance delays. Daniel usually ignored it. Tonight felt wrong from the moment the elevator began rising. The overhead lights dimmed slightly, casting strange shadows across the mirrored walls. Daniel rubbed tired eyes and stared at the glowing floor numbers above the doors. 2, 3, 4, everything normal. Yet a strange pressure slowly settled in the elevator, subtle at first but impossible to ignore. The air felt heavier with every floor. Around floor 7, Daniel noticed his phone signal vanish completely. No bars, no Wi-Fi, nothing. He frowned. That had never happened before. Then came the sound. Knock, knock, knock. 3 slow knocks from somewhere above the ceiling. Daniel looked upward immediately. Silence followed. He exhaled nervously. Old buildings made noises. Pipes expanded. Metal shifted. Still, something about those knocks sounded deliberate, human. The elevator suddenly jerked violently between floors. Daniel nearly spilled his coffee. Seriously? He muttered under his breath. The lights blinked twice. Then the elevator stopped completely. Silence swallowed everything. Daniel sighed in frustration and pressed the door open button repeatedly. Nothing happened. He tried the emergency phone mounted beside the control panel, dead. No due tone at all. Outside the elevator walls, the building felt impossibly quiet now. Not even distant city traffic remained. Then the floor display above the doors flickered strangely. Daniel stared upward in confusion as the red digital numbers shifted slowly. 10. 11. Then a number appeared that made his stomach tighten instantly. 13. Daniel frowned hard. That's impossible. Blackthorne Heights only had 12 floors. He knew that because he lived on the highest one. There was no floor 13. No hidden level. No extra penthouse. Yet the glowing number remained steady above the door. 13. Then the elevator dinged softly. The doors began opening. Dix expected a maintenance hallway or unfinished floor. Instead, he saw only darkness. Endless black darkness stretching beyond the elevator frame like an empty void. No walls, no lights, no floor visible beyond the first few feet. Just darkness swallowing everything. Ice-cold air drifted slowly into the elevator. Daniel backed away instinctively. His pulse quickened while his flashlight app flickered weakly against the void ahead. The beam barely traveled before disappearing completely. Then something moved inside the darkness. Fast, too fast. Daniel froze. "Hello?" he called cautiously. Silence answered. Then the whispering started, faint voices overlapping softly somewhere beyond the darkness. Too distorted to understand clearly. Daniel stepped backward until his shoulders touched the elevator wall. The whispers grew louder. "Help us!" His blood ran cold. Then he saw her. A woman slowly stepped into the edge of the flashlight beam. Pale skin. Long black hair hanging wet against her shoulders. Her head tilted unnaturally sideways while dark water dripped from her dress onto the invisible floor beneath her. She stared silently toward Daniel with empty, expressionless eyes. "Mom!" Daniel whispered shakily. The woman slowly lifted one arm and pointed deeper into the darkness behind her. Daniel noticed then that her body bent wrong. Like several bones had healed incorrectly after being broken. Suddenly the elevator lights flickered violently overhead. The woman vanished instantly. Gone. Daniel slammed the closed door button repeatedly. The doors finally began sliding shut inch by inch. Relief flooded through him. Until a pale hand suddenly slammed against the narrowing gap from the darkness outside. The doors stopped immediately. Thin white fingers gripped the edge tightly. Then more hands emerged beside it. Dozens. Wet pale hands stretching from the darkness to force the doors back open wider. Daniel stumbled backward in horror while faces slowly appeared behind them. Men, women, children, all soaked completely in dark water. All staring silently toward him with hollow black eyes. Their whispers became deafening. "Stay with us!" The elevator suddenly dropped without warning. Daniel slammed violently against the floor as the lights exploded overhead. Darkness swallowed everything instantly while the elevator plummeted downward through the shaft. Metal screamed around him. Cables groaned horribly somewhere above. Daniel clawed desperately against the floor while gravity twisted violently around him. Then, bang, the elevator crashed to a stop hard enough to crack the ceiling lights. Emergency red lighting flickered weakly overhead. Daniel lay gasping on the floor, surrounded by sparks and smoke. The doors remained shut now. Thank God. Trembling violently, he forced himself upright and checked the floor display. Blank. Completely dead. Daniel pressed the emergency button again desperately. Static exploded from the speaker overhead. Then a voice crackled through, sounding distorted and terrified. "You shouldn't have stopped there." Daniel froze instantly. "Hello? Who is this?" Loud static answered first. Then the voice returned weaker this time. "If the doors open again, do not look outside." The speaker died immediately afterward. Silence returned. Daniel's breathing quickened. He pulled out his phone again. Still no signal. Then he heard scratching. Slow scratching sounds coming from inside the elevator walls around him. Daniel aimed his flashlight toward the metal panels. His stomach dropped instantly. Deep scratch marks covered the inside walls. Hundreds of them, messages carved desperately into the steel by fingernails or sharp metal. "Help US." Listen to them. They make you want to leave. One message near the floor made his blood freeze completely. "There is no floor 13. Suddenly the elevator dinged softly again. Daniel turned slowly toward the doors. The floor display flickered back to life. 13. "No," Daniel whispered immediately. "No, no, no." The doors began opening once more. This time the darkness outside stood much closer somehow. Like the void itself had moved nearer during the crash. Daniel squeezed himself into the furthest corner of the elevator while cold air poured inside again. Then footsteps echoed from the darkness. Slow, wet footsteps approaching carefully. Drip, drip, drip. A tall man stepped partially into view. He wore an old-fashioned elevator operator uniform soaked completely in black water. His skin appeared pale gray beneath flickering lights. But his face had no eyes, only empty black sockets leaking dark liquid slowly down his cheeks. The eyeless operator smiled unnaturally wide. "You missed your stop," he whispered softly. His voice sounded layered somehow, as though dozens whispered beneath the words simultaneously. Daniel's pulse exploded. "Stay away from me." The operator tilted his head slightly. "Everyone reaches floor 13 eventually." Suddenly, every button on the control panel illuminated at once. Ding, 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 ding. The elevator jerked upward violently. Daniel crashed into the wall while the operator remained perfectly still. The floor numbers above the door changed impossibly fast now. 15, 23, 48, 72. The building only had 12 floors. Yet the elevator continued climbing somewhere impossible. The pressure inside changed painfully. Daniel's ears rang sharply. The walls groaned around him like metal under crushing weight. Then the operator slowly pointed toward the ceiling. Daniel looked upward. Dark water dripped steadily through the ceiling panels now. Water carrying strands of long black hair. Knock, knock, knock. Something knocked above them again. But this time another knocking answered from beneath the elevator floor, directly below Daniel's feet. Knock, knock, knock. Daniel nearly screamed. Something surrounded the elevator shaft in darkness. Something climbing alongside them. The elevator finally stopped with a violent jolt that knocked Daniel to his knees. Silence followed instantly. The floor display no longer showed numbers. Only a strange blinking symbol Daniel didn't recognize. The doors slid open slowly. Daniel wished immediately they hadn't. Beyond the elevator stretched an endless flooded hallway, disappearing into darkness far beyond what the building physically allowed. Ceiling lights flickered weakly overhead, reflecting across several inches of black water covering the floor. Apartment doors lined both walls endlessly. Some hung slightly open, others rattled violently from the inside. Daniel stared in frozen horror while pale human shapes moved slowly beneath the water itself. Swimming, watching. The eyeless operator stepped calmly out of the elevator first. "Come," he whispered softly. Daniel remained frozen inside. "What is this place?" The operator paused. "Where unfinished journeys wait." Then screaming erupted from one of the nearby apartment doors. "Help me!" A terrified human voice, real, desperate. Daniel's instinct screamed not to leave the elevator. but the screams continued. Finally, he stepped cautiously into the flooded hallway. Ice-cold water soaked instantly through his shoes. The moment he exited the elevator, the doors slammed shut behind him. Daniel spun around instantly. Gone. The elevator no longer existed. Only solid wall remained. Panic surged through him. The screaming nearby grew louder. Daniel followed it toward apartment 1310. The door shook violently while someone pounded desperately from inside. "Please let me out!" Daniel grabbed the handle immediately and yanked the door open. Inside sat a small apartment submerged beneath several inches of dark water. A terrified woman crouched crying in the corner. "Thank God," she gasped shakily. "You're alive." Daniel stepped toward her cautiously. "Who are you?" The woman slowly stopped crying. Then she smiled, too wide. Her jaw cracked open unnaturally far while black water poured from her mouth onto the flooded floor. Dozens of whispering voices emerged together from inside her throat. Another one. Pale hands suddenly erupted from the water around Daniel's legs, dragging him downward violently. The hallway lights exploded all at once. Darkness swallowed everything except the woman's impossible smile glowing faintly in the blackness. Daniel fought wildly while icy hands dragged him deeper into the flooded darkness. The smiling woman crawled unnaturally across the ceiling toward him while whispering voices echoed from every apartment around them. Doors burst open one by one, revealing drowned figures emerging slowly into the hallway. Some wore business suits, others hospital gowns. Some appeared decades old. But every single one stared hungrily toward Daniel. The eyeless operator appeared again at the far end of the corridor, watching silently. "They were passengers too," he whispered calmly. Daniel realized the horrifying truth instantly. Floor 13 wasn't a hidden floor. It was a place between life and death, collecting people lost during unfinished journeys. Elevator accidents, stairwell falls, fires, floods, crashes, souls trapped between destinations. And now it wanted him too. The drowned figures dragged Daniel toward an open elevator waiting at the end of the flooded hallway. Inside waited only endless darkness descending forever downward. Daniel clawed desperately against the water-covered floor while pale fingers tightened around his legs. Suddenly his hand struck something metal mounted low against the wall, an emergency fire axe. With desperate strength, Daniel grabbed it and swung wildly at the pale hands restraining him. Black water exploded everywhere, while the drowned figures shrieked horribly. Daniel sprinted immediately through the endless corridor. Behind him, hundreds of wet footsteps splashed through floodwater, chasing him. Apartment doors slammed violently open and shut around him. Then Daniel saw it ahead. The original elevator stood glowing warmly at the end of the hallway. Salvation. He ran toward it desperately. The eyeless operator suddenly appeared directly in front of the elevator entrance, blocking his path. "You cannot leave once you arrive," he whispered softly. Daniel raised the axe shakily. "Move." The operator smiled wider. "You're already dead." Daniel hesitated. Memories flooded suddenly through his mind. Rain, headlights. Crossing the street outside Blackthorne Heights earlier that night. A speeding truck. Impact. Daniel's blood turned cold. The operator leaned closer. The elevator never reached the lobby. Daniel stumbled backward in horror while memories returned fully now. He remembered stepping off the sidewalk after leaving work. Remembered the blinding headlights speeding toward him through rain. Remembered pain exploding through his body before darkness swallowed everything. The elevator ride never happened. "No?" Daniel whispered weakly. "That's not possible." The operator tilted his head slowly. "You died before entering the building." The flooded hallway around them groaned loudly. More drowned figures emerged from apartment doors now. Hundreds. Watching silently. Daniel backed toward the glowing elevator while gripping the axe desperately. "Then, why am I here?" The operator's expression darkened. "Because you refused to cross." Suddenly the hallway lights flickered violently. The drowned figures began whispering together. "Stay?" Daniel looked toward the glowing elevator again. Unlike the darkness surrounding floor 13, warm golden light poured softly from inside this elevator. Real light. Human light. For one brief moment, Daniel saw something inside the reflection of the elevator doors. His mother crying in a hospital waiting room. Doctors rushing through emergency hallways, machines beeping desperately. Daniel's body wasn't gone yet. Somewhere above, doctors still fought to save him. The operator noticed his realization instantly. "If you leave now," he whispered quietly, "someone else must remain." Daniel frowned in confusion. Then he heard footsteps approaching from deeper inside the flooded corridor. Familiar footsteps. Marcus. Daniel's younger brother slowly emerged from the darkness looking terrified and confused. "Daniel!" he shouted. "Where are you?" Daniel's stomach dropped instantly. Marcus wasn't dead. Somehow, the connection between worlds had reached him too. The drowned figures turned toward Marcus immediately. Hungry whispers filled the hallway. The operator smiled sadly. One living soul always calls another. Pale hands suddenly burst from beneath the floodwater, grabbing Marcus's legs. Marcus screamed in terror. Daniel sprinted toward him instantly while swinging the axe wildly at grasping hands. "Run!" Marcus stumbled backward desperately. The operator watched silently. "Choose," he whispered. "Return to life, or save him." The flooded hallway began collapsing around them violently. Apartment doors burst open while endless black water flooded through the corridors. The drowned figures surged forward together, reaching toward Marcus hungrily. Daniel realized the horrifying truth instantly. Floor 13 needed living souls to remain connected to the world above. If Daniel escaped back to life, the doorway would drag Marcus down instead. The operator extended one pale hand calmly toward Daniel. Every journey requires a passenger. Marcus screamed again while pale figures dragged him closer toward the endless darkness inside the elevator shaft at the corridor's end. Daniel looked toward the glowing elevator behind him. Freedom, survival, life. Then he looked back toward Marcus, drowning beneath grasping hands. Decision flooded through him instantly. Daniel charged forward, swinging the axe furiously while black water exploded around him. He grabbed Marcus's arm and hurled him toward the glowing elevator with all his strength. "Go!" Marcus stumbled inside just as the elevator doors began closing automatically. Daniel tried to follow, but dozens of pale hands seized him from behind. The drowned figures dragged him backward violently into the flooded corridor. Marcus screamed Daniel's name while pounding desperately against the closing doors. Daniel forced himself to smile weakly. "Tell Mom I'm sorry." The elevator doors shut completely. Warm light vanished. Silence fell briefly across floor 13. Then the drowned figures pulled Daniel slowly toward the endless darkness waiting below the flooded hallway. The eyeless operator watched silently beside him. "Another keeper," he whispered softly. Black water closed over Daniel completely. Above, inside the real world, doctors shocked Daniel Mercer's body repeatedly inside an emergency room at 12:03 a.m. Flatline monitors screamed beside him. Then suddenly, heartbeat restored. Daniel gasped violently back to life. Nurses shouted in shock while doctors stared in disbelief. Daniel survived, but afterward he refused elevators completely. Refused mirrors too. Because sometimes late at night, he still sees flooded hallways reflected where they shouldn't exist. And occasionally, when elevators open in empty buildings, he hears wet footsteps approaching slowly from inside. Drip, drip, drip. Then a familiar whisper echoes softly from the darkness beyond the doors. "You missed your stop."